Welcome back to the studio, everybody. I'm here with none other than Jim Dew, wealth management expert, and today we're going to talk about how billionaires invest and how you can copy them. So Jim, you've seen some pretty big bank accounts, $100 million plus. You've helped people manage their assets, and you studied under billionaires. What lessons have you learned from them on how to operate and how people can invest?
The first thing that billionaires do that very well, and the ultra high net worth as well, is having an overall strategy as to how they're invested. So for example, UBS does a survey every couple of years with family offices. So they find out how the average billionaire is allocated. So just recently, the most recent survey came up with the average billionaire has 32% stocks, 15% bonds, 10% cash, 21% private equity, 2% private debt, 4% hedge funds, 1% arts and collectibles, 1% infrastructure, 1% precious metals, and 1% commodities. That should add up to 100%. The whole point is they have an overall strategy so that when they look at an investment as a possibility, they already know how it fits into the overall strategy. The mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make is they only look at the investment itself instead of how does it fit into their overall strategy. So have your allocation strategy first, decide how much real estate you want to have, how much stocks, how much private equity, and then within there, how you're going to diversify. So within real estate, you might not want to be all single family homes. Maybe you want to have some multifamily, maybe some self-storage, maybe some RV parks. So think about your allocation, and then within that allocation, your diversification strategy. Because one lesson that I've seen over and over is you get rich by being concentrated in a business. You stay rich by being diversified outside that business or when you sell or exit that business.
Interesting. When you talk about diversification, I think of Warren Buffett and how he always talks against diversification, right? He's very much concentration. And I guess that makes sense when you're wealth building, that's the strategy to go. Can you talk a little bit more about that and talk about the disadvantages of diversification and how people can run into problems with that?
Absolutely. So concentration, you can make a lot more money. Diversification is for safety purposes. Any diversification, you're going to give up upside, but you're also going to give up downside. So understanding why you're investing and what you're trying to accomplish is key. So if you're still trying to get rich, then being more concentrated, especially in a business, can be important. But the mistake I see entrepreneurs make is they'll be concentrated in their business, which they understand and they know, and then they'll go put money in a concentrated position in something they don't understand and don't have any experience with. Think of, cryptocurrency. I saw a lot of entrepreneurs lost a lot of money in cryptocurrency because they didn't understand it. They wanted to be concentrated, so they put all their money in, let's say, Polkadot or OneCoin or something like that, and then it didn't work out to their advantage. So the key is, when you're trying to get wealthy, concentration can help you. When you're trying to stay wealthy, diversification can help you.
Awesome. Compound interest is a term that comes up a lot when we talk about investments. Can you talk about what you see, millionaires and billionaires setting their standards of what kind of returns that they're looking for and how that can compound over time?
It really depends on what they're trying to achieve. So again, when you're trying to stay wealthy, you're not as concerned about how high the returns are as if you're trying to get wealthy. And compound interest, it's funny how this gets talked about a lot, but people really still don't understand it. In fact, there's a book called The Psychology of Money that talks about this and frames it up pretty well. So if you started January 1st with $1, and on January 2nd, that doubled to $2, and on January 3rd, that doubled to $4, and so on, for the 31 days in January, how much would you have on January 31st? Any guesses, Jonathan?
I don't know, like 100,000, 200,000?
You would actually have $1,073,742,000. So you made the Billionaires Club in 31 days. But here's the key. If you missed a week and you started on January 8th, you'd only end up with 8.3 million. So you would miss out on 99% of the money by just missing the first week. So the lesson is, make sure you're investing regularly. If you're sitting there on cash hoping the stars are going to align, you're going to invest at the perfect moment, don't do that. Get invested and invest over time regularly. That's what's going to make you wealthy. In fact, you mentioned Warren Buffett. 95% of Warren Buffett's wealth came after he was age 65, and he's been investing since he was 14 years old. So remember, compound interest is a huge thing, and you want to make sure you're taking advantage of it. One other thing I think I'll mention is a lot of times people misunderstand the difference between $1 million and $1 billion. So when I was a public school math teacher, I used to ask the kids, how long does it take for a million seconds to go by? And then how long does it take for 1 billion seconds to go by? So for 1,000,000 seconds, it takes just over 11 days. For 1,000,000,000 seconds, just over 32 years. So when you talk about a millionaire versus a billionaire, it's a big idea. So make sure you're investing regularly over time to get compound interest.
Interesting. And then if we're talking about, this compound interest, it's not always steady. People always say, put your money in stocks and it'll grow, 8% every year. But the reality is you have huge leaps some years and then you have pullbacks the other years. Can you talk about volatility and how people can use that and how that kind of plays into some billionaire strategies?
The first thing that you have to think of when it comes to volatility is it's a part of life. You have to accept it. My wife and I last year for our 30th wedding anniversary went on a catamaran in the Caribbean, and it was just my wife and I, a chef, and a captain. And it was amazing. And we're out there just hopping around to islands, and we're at this beautiful island. It was gorgeous. And we're anchored there. And in the morning, the next morning, the captain said, do you want to go see other islands? And we said, what are the other islands like? He said, beautiful, but different. We said, yeah, let's go see the other islands. And he said, well, I have to warn you. The water is rough. The ocean is rough between this island and the next island. Do you still want to go? And we said, yeah, we still want to go. And that's the way you have to think of investing, because to get to the next level, you're going to have to suffer through volatility, because every great investment that's going to make you a lot of money is going to go up and down. Now, if it's real estate, maybe you don't notice it as much because you're not sure what your property is worth unless you're actually trying to sell it. But don't look for an investment to say, I want to find an investment that has no volatility and can make me a lot of money. That doesn't exist. So accept the volatility. For long-term good returns, you have to accept that the prices are going to move up and down in between.
Awesome. We talked a lot about different strategies, whether you want a concentrated portfolio, whether you want a diversified portfolio, whether you want to invest in, crypto, commodities, whatever. If you had to offer one piece of advice for someone to grow their net worth into hundreds of millions of dollars, what's the most straightforward path that someone could take?
The easy answer to that is own a small business. CEG Worldwide gave a statistic a couple years ago, and they said that 95% of Americans who have more than $20 million of liquid net worth were business owners. And it reminds me of an interview that was done with Bezos within the last couple of years. And the person interviewing Bezos said to him, what do you get asked all the time? And he said, what's going to change in the next 10 years? And then he followed up and said, but you know what I don't get asked that I should get asked? What's not going to change in the next 10 years? Because it's easier to predict what's not going to change in the next 10 years than to predict what's going to change. So think about that with investing. Think about what's not going to change and think about getting rich. So I think in 10 years, what's not going to change is still 95% of the wealthiest Americans will have owned a small business. I don't think it's going to be in 10 years, 95% of the wealthiest Americans bought Bitcoin at the right time. I just don't think that's going to happen. So focused on building a small business is the easiest and most predictable way. I shouldn't say it's easy because I built a business, but it's the most predictable way to get seriously wealthy in this country.
And you know what? Why that makes so much sense to me is that if you are earning profits from your business and can invest that in something that you can control, that the more effort you put into, the more successful you will be, it only makes sense that that's going to be your biggest compounding factor. Like it will be successful, or you have the greatest chance of success that way. So thanks for sharing your tips, Jim. We really appreciate you coming on the show, and we will see you guys on the next one.